Welcome in Geetika ki Canadian Diary. There is one word these days that seems to be coming up a lot in our conversations at home, outside, school, office, social gatherings, and that is anxiety. What is it? We'll talk more about it today. We have in studio our guest, Dr. Saunia Ahmad, founding director of the Toronto Psychology Clinic. Thank you so much, Dr. Saunia, for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
My very first question is, how would you define anxiety in the simplest manner?
Anxiety is a universal emotion. It's the same thing as fear. Fear is the emotional reaction we have in response to something harmful that's actually about to happen to us. And however, anxiety, while it's the same feeling, it's a response, a fear response to something we imagine is going to happen to us. And here's the thing, everyone has anxiety. It's not a bad thing. We all have a little bit of anxiety. It's something that helps us get up in the morning, get to work, and get things done. Anxiety becomes a problem when it becomes intense and overwhelms our ability to cope with day-to-day stressors. And the good news is that there are tools and strategies that people can learn to manage their anxiety more effectively.
I'm glad that you said that we all have, in some way. We are always anxious, mild, little bit, and it's just a reaction to stress, as you said. Um, I'm asking now, the second question is, are you born with it, or you can develop it over time, like circumstances, maybe domestic violence, a child has now developed anxiety in life, or say war, natural disasters, things like that. Can you develop it over time or you're born with it?
So everyone, as I said earlier, does experience a certain level of anxiety, and some people are more predisposed than others genetically. However, I find that anxiety issues are determined by multiple factors, like you said, many different stressors that can happen throughout someone's life. And in particular, we find that it's developmental stressors. Children can often experience and develop anxiety as a result of stresses such as seeing anxiety in their parents, as you said, domestic issues, environmental, world issues that are happening, and just issues happening in their personal lives. One thing in particular to keep in mind that I find often when talking about people develop anxiety from a developmental perspective is children of immigrants. Immigrants often are dealing with a lot of stress, financial stresses, social discrimination, adaptation, and they experience more anxiety, and then the children develop it watching their parents. And again, the good news is while you can learn to be anxious, you can unlearn it as well too.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that you can unlearn, because I think I'm a little bit on that path. As you said, well, yeah, sometimes just things around you, right? I've only recently realized that I am actually a little anxious person, like to begin with, and maybe I've been raised like that. I want everything right, but I can't have everything right. So to blame myself if something went wrong is not a good idea. Um, so I'm unlearning that, for example, right? Because that's making me anxious all the time. If I'm not doing this right, it's my problem. It's my mistake. I didn't put in enough effort. So that's making me anxious, for example. I don't know if all mothers do that or most mothers do that. Yeah. If something happened with my child, something did he or she did wrong, it's me. I don't know if it's cultural or universal. But yeah, I want to ask, how can you figure it out if it is something that is manageable? Like you can do meditation, yoga. I tell my kids all the time, like, oh, sometimes near their tests, like they're like anxious, like, oh, mommy, I want to get 100%, but I'm anxious now. What do? I can't sleep. So I say, okay, let's do yoga together, or let's do meditation together, right? Or read a nice book together. But then how do you figure out now it's time to seek medical help? Like, what's that line in between?
Well, we were talking earlier about, yes, like we all have certain anxiety behaviors, which you're referring to. And I often start with people sort of recognizing what is anxiety? What does it look like for them? Anxiety has three parts. It's our thoughts, what we tell ourselves. It's the physical sensation in our body, shortness of breath, heart racing, butterflies in the stomach. This is real sense that something bad's going to happen. And then And then behaviors, anxiety behaviors, checking, seeking reassurance, avoidance. When we can identify each of those, then we can talk about strategies that one can use. And often people need more than one strategy that tackles one of those three things that I highlighted. For instance, people can learn to identify their thoughts. What are the thoughts that they're having? Write it down. Often when people are anxious, they don't really pay attention to the thoughts. They're kind of running constantly like a loop in their head. And when
Mhm.
they bring it to their surface, when they write it down, then they really see, what am I worried about? Then they can do the work of trying to identify, is this really true? Is it really accurate? They can check their understanding, and that requires some practice. Also, physically, as you were saying earlier, yoga, meditation, deep breathing, these strategies help to calm the body down. And it's important because when you calm the body down, then your body doesn't continue to send signals to your brain saying something's wrong. Because what happens is when people have a worry thought, they start to breathe more shallow breaths, they get anxious, and then that actually triggers the brain to say, look, your body's telling you that something's wrong. So when you can do things like yoga, meditation, now some people find, can't meditate. When I meditate, I'm kind of going through all these worry thoughts. So what I recommend is do something that engages your mind. Music, dance, that kind of pulls you away from thinking so much. You're focused more on your body. So strategies that focus on your body can really help tackle the anxiety. And then finally, we also recommend that people don't engage in anxiety behaviors. We help them recognize them and help them develop more, productive behaviors. Sometimes, maybe we need to help them get comfortable with the thing that they're anxious about and do something
Yeah.
the opposite, and to learn and train their mind to recognize you're safe. You don't need to
Yeah, you're
worry.
so right, Dr. Sonia. You're so right. Actually, that is one thing that I personally sometimes have to do. Like, yeah, write it down. And I've seen friends and family members and some other people that I meet, and they talk about, when we talk about things like, oh, this is challenging these days, or how to deal with that, it's making me anxious. Um, I notice sometimes people, you're right, that they will move away from that topic that is actually making them anxious. And when you start writing, it does pop up, and then you will know exactly what's making me anxious,
It makes
right?
it more tangible. It makes it more like clear. What am I worrying about? And then you can tackle it. The end, the sort of the very thing that is on an ongoing basis making you very, very worried and anxious. When you put it on paper, you objectify it a bit more.
Yeah, just like if you recognize it, then you will deal with it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then sometimes dealing becomes a problem because there's a stigma also attached with that, right? Especially with girls, I think, and women. It's like, oh, why are you anxious about that? And you kind of feel like maybe I shouldn't say that, because maybe the other person listening to me will say, oh, you can't manage it. You're not capable of doing it. It's making you anxious. You start kind of self-doubting, right? Or am I weak? Should I
Mhm.
be braving it out? Like, not talk about it? Is this cultural or universal?
I would say it's both. So anxiety is a universal emotion. People across cultures feel it. How the thing what triggers anxiety and how it's expressed can vary across cultures and across gender, as you were saying, women versus men. For instance, again, sometimes women are more focused on how well are my relationships going. Are do people like me? And there's also often more greater fears about being abandoned, not being rejected. So worrying about interpersonal relationships is very common. And then on top of that, there is, as you say, a stigma about saying, I'm struggling. This is too much. I can't manage this on my own. And to speak up and ask for help when you're the person who's generally expected to be the nurturer and take care of others can be really hard. So there's often an encouragement of like, take care of your others first. You're worrying for no reason. You're too focused on yourself. And yes, the stigma of like asking for help to a complete stranger, a professional, how is it going to help? What's very important is to recognize that while everyone experiences anxiety, anxiety can become a health issue, just like any other physical health issue. When you're finding that despite all your efforts, you're worrying more days than not, and it's interfering in your quality of your life, it is worth seeking out an assessment with a registered mental health professional to understand, is this a health issue? Do I need medical help for this?
So sometimes people say, oh, why would I go to a psychologist's office? Because what if it becomes my medical history? What impact will it have in my future medical history? what will happen? Maybe I'll lose my license and things like that. People who don't know about those things. Can you please clarify that?
Well, see, psychologists are registered health professionals, just like a physician is. And so, just like physicians, we do by law have to maintain a record, but we also by law have to maintain your confidentiality. If we let anyone, with this exception of a couple of exceptions by law that even physicians have to follow, we are not allowed to let anyone know that you even came to therapy, let alone what you shared. So confidentiality is key, not just from a legal standpoint, but from their treatment effectiveness standpoint. Only when people feel really safe and secure to open up, I find that they really go places, share things that helps them feel better, improve their mental well-being, and feel more empowered, as opposed to feeling overwhelmed and controlled by the anxiety.
In so many ways we have progressed as a society, but I feel in so many ways we are still stuck in very odd thoughts and myths and cultural beliefs. Like, for example, this one, I asked you that question is like, you don't talk about depression and anxiety outside. First of all, you should not be having it. Try to deal with it and brave it out. Or if you have it, then maybe talk with somebody in the family. Don't go and talk about it outside. So that's by going to a doctor's office or a psychologist would be a no-no, big no-no, right? For many people. So you're telling me that, yeah, sometimes just to go and making it clear for people who are listening that you guys don't go and start advertising it or telling others. It is just like any doctor's visit. It is confidential.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, again, speaking to like the lack of clarity on what is mental health issue, what is an anxiety disorder, what is a depressive disorder, when is it normal sadness and when is it depression, when is it normal just a little bit of anxiety to an anxiety disorder. People try to figure that out on their own. And what we say is just like you wouldn't necessarily try to diagnose yourself with cancer or diabetes,
Hmm.
a health professional to check, is this the case or not? You got to think about mental health the exact same way. I find that in the Toronto Psychology Clinic and our intake, when new referral people are calling us for services, they're quite unsure, and we say that's okay. It's very important for you to check in with your mental health. It's very important to talk to someone, just have one appointment to see, should I be worried? Is this a
Yeah.
mental health concern? Can I manage this on my own? Or
Yeah.
do I need more professional help? You don't have to try to figure that out on your own. All you have to sort of see is, if have I tried? Have I spoken to family and friends? Or maybe you don't feel comfortable speaking to family
Hmm.
and friends. Maybe they're going to make it worse. Often
Hmm.
some people find that their friends and family say, don't worry, you're
Yeah.
fine, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help if you have a problem with anxiety, because you don't choose to worry. You're trying not to worry. And when you're sharing your worry, what you're looking for is some support and guidance that how do I deal with this uh,
Manage. Yeah.
issue that I can't manage on my own.
So tell me one thing. Do women go through stages of depression and anxiety, or are they more likely to go through uh, anxiety because of so many changes they go through in their body over the lifetime? So many things that they have to go through as a mother, daughter, even in some cultures, even just because you are a girl, you know how much problem you've created in the family, right? So
Yeah.
that's the start of their life. Think about that. I kind of feel, oh my God, we really need to educate our families around the world that this is a precious thing that's come to your house and value it. Because so it is so ironical that, as you said, that you are the nurturers, so you cannot complain. But then this one person will do so much throughout her life, right? Create a family, raise them, play so many roles, and then yet we don't want to acknowledge her at the very start. So, do you
Yeah.
think women go through this more than men?
I don't know if they go through it more, but it looks different for them. And like you say, they have different social pressures on them, different social expectations, and how they internalize those expectations is what will determine how they're doing, and how they're managing their anxiety and what's triggering their anxiety. Definitely, what you're referring to for women, there are expectations around being married and having children, and and around managing and balancing a career and doing very
Mhm.
well while being a mother, for
Mhm.
or being a partner, and many different roles. I find that for women there's a lot of different roles, and there's often not enough support around them that is really sort of addresses the unique circumstances that they're under in this time and age, when they may have many roles. And now more and more women have advanced in their career in ways that was not possible in previous generations. But then there's not enough support for women in particular in the workplace. And also in our health system, there's not enough supports for women who are dealing with many different stressors that are unique to them. Like, so for instance, for a lot of women, they deal with, when they become mothers, they deal with postpartum anxiety and depression. It's something that we don't talk enough about, and don't normalize enough, that it's a very common mental health issue. It's different than the baby blues. We could talk more about that. It's very normal for women, when they go through some adjustment period, when they go through different developmental milestones, such as having children, that they may experience more stress, more anxiety, to the point that it becomes a mental health issue and requires professional help. But often, again, it comes down to, often there's this expectation that it's just part of life. It's just normal stress. You just got to have to deal with it, but not recognizing that they do need some more unique attention and supports because of the challenges of dealing with multiple roles and being expected to do it all perfectly.
Yeah, that expected to do all perfect is a very key sentence there. And you brought up postpartum depression. I had very difficult pregnancies, and my recovery time periods were unknown, as told by my medical team.
Yeah.
And yes, it was unknown. For the second one, it took like years, 8 years. And I did not know, is it my guilt that I am not able to pick up the newborn for like 4 or 5 months, or I'm not being a good mom? Uh, is it just my normal anxiety? Is it postpartum depression? How long should have it been there for me? Or maybe I'm not helping myself. Why is it there so long? So I was blaming a lot. It was me, I was telling myself. But I want you to clarify, how long does the postpartum depression continue? Should it end, as most people believe, oh, maybe within 6 months, or you're not, or some, I even heard something weird that somebody was told when she was having postpartum depression, that some people came to her and said, you're not happy that you're a mom? And I was like, ouch. Um, so what do you have to say about postpartum depression? Um, what does it look like? How long it can continue?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to normalize that a lot of women, most women, in fact, as soon as they get pregnant, as soon as they have their child, especially after their first child, experience a lot of difficulties adjusting, and we don't talk enough about it. I get a lot of clients who come to therapy to discuss how they're feeling because they feel such a guilt. Like, they are like, I thought I should be happy. I'm a mom. I
Mhm,
love my
mhm.
child. How terrible it is that I find that I'm struggling with this. As part of me
Yeah,
also wishes I never did this. That
yeah,
is very normal. We don't talk enough about it. We glamorize being a mother on television, so a lot of women are silent about how they feel. It is normal. It doesn't mean you don't love your child. You're just a human. It means you're a human. You're sort of like, this is hard, because it is hard. It's a huge adjustment. So that is very normal. Now, for some people, they actually do develop postpartum depression, anxiety, and it's something that is a health issue that needs professional help. It doesn't just go away on its own. If it did, then it may not be. Sometimes it could, but sometimes people need help. In terms of how long it'll take, it could take years. It could take a few months. It could take years. It all depends on what you're doing in that time, how you're seeking out help, whether it's even family support to deal and manage, versus, and also professional help and that's not enough. It's very important. And also, speaking to what you said too, where they told you that recovery, they didn't even know how long the recovery is going to take, and it took longer than you thought it would.
yeah,
Is that the uncertainty breeds anxiety. Anxiety is a way, to gain control when we don't have control, and to not know how long something's going to take
yeah,
triggers people to naturally feel anxious. And the thing about postpartum, which is really challenging, is we actually don't know what leads to it. But we find that it could be multiple things. First, hormonal changes and the
Mhm.
hormonal fluctuations that happen post pregnancy is thought to be a part of it. And then on top of that, if a person has pre existing vulnerabilities to depression, anxiety, maybe some adjustment issues with their partner, with their in laws, with their own family, that can further exacerbate things. And if they themselves don't have the skills to cope with a lot of this huge change, then they start to feel anxious and they feel guilty, and then that interferes with their bonding with their child. And again, the good news is there is a lot of treatment out there, and it's an opportunity for the woman to develop some skills to cope with the stress that will continue as their child grows, and they can model healthy coping behaviors to their child as well.
Thank you, Dr. Sonia, for saying all of that. Um, why am I noticing more cases these days? I'm not saying just me. I hear from lots of people that the word anxiety seems to be coming up even when you go out for a walk, strike a conversation with a stranger, your neighbor. This word is popping up a lot in our conversations. Do you think it is our lifestyle, or we are more comfortable talking about it in some ways? Or we have smaller families, our disconnection with the society, social media. What do you think is the cause?
I think it's all of that. I think it's definitely during COVID, we saw an increase in people seeking out mental health support.
Mhm.
We also saw an increase in people talking about mental health and normalizing talking about mental health and seeking out help. So more people are talking about it, which is a great thing. At the same time, we found that more and more people are living remotely. They're working remote, they're doing all their activities remote, and they're spending more and more time interacting with others through technology,
Yeah,
through emails, through text, through social media. A lot of also what's going on is what I call asynchronous communication. When you're emailing, texting, and or interacting on social media, you're not communicating live one-on-one. You're sending a message and or you're reading a message at different times, and that also has caused a disconnect. And we know that biologically, people need to interact socially in person by voice or face to face at minimum, if not in person, to improve their mood, to feel whole, to feel fulfilled, to feel content. And we've lost a lot of that. So when I do therapy, I find that it's really important nowadays to ask people when they're feeling stressed, anxious, depressed is how much time are you spending at home? How do you work from home? How many days a week? And when we look at how their week is, we start to talk about how can we build that back in, like social contact, because that's very important. If you're not going to work, what else can you do to make up for the social connection that you're losing? So yeah,
mhm.
it's the social connections, the technology has definitely started to increase people's anxiety and stress, but people are also just talking more about it.
This is great. I'm loving talking to you, Dr. Sonia. But my wrap up question is going to be resources for help. I wish I could talk to you more about um, how to deal with anxiety when you're working remotely. Maybe we'll have another interview all about that. So, can you quickly tell us about resources for help?
There are a lot of resources online. I would recommend searching the Ontario Psychological Association. It's, they have a great directory that can connect you with psychologists. There's also Psychology Today, which is a website that a lot of people find. Many therapists across North America, actually, and a lot of them from Ontario here are also on that listserv. We also have our own website, torontopsychology.com/resources, where we list some resources for people. They don't always have to necessarily come see us, but there are a lot of different clinics and a lot of different organizations and health professionals that can provide the right and effective help.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Take care.